Okay, we are good to go, and I'm looking forward to whoever is going to join this conversation today. And I know a number of you have put through some questions and some angles that you'd like me to cover today, and I'm loving that this is my very first LinkedIn Live, so there's bound to be some technical issues along the way. But I'm so pleased to be putting this subject out there because it's something very, very close to my heart. Although I'm on social media now, and although I'm speaking with a lot of leaders and I set up a lot of events, it looks like I'm really out there and doing all the things, which I am. But it hasn't always been this way. I'm a shy introvert, and I have worked very hard at trying to find the courage to find my voice and speak out and speak up. So today I really want to share my learnings in terms of it's become something of an obsession of mine because I know how hard it is to speak up if it's just not something that that you've grown up with. And so this is what we're going to be grappling with, a whole lot of issues today around how you advocate. But really, it's so that you can find your voice, you can progress in your career, and you can become a better leader. Because for those of you who follow me, you will know that I really care about creating better leaders and help nurturing and help support and develop leaders. So I'm going to share my insights, things I've learned along the way through my own lessons and through talking with a number of leaders around these issues. And I think advocacy really does start with you understanding first and foremost what it is you stand for. So I think that's a really essential place to begin because it's really hard to speak up and to speak out if you're not really sure about what it is you stand for. Now, I would say that it doesn't need to be fully formed ideas, but start small and get as clear as you can with those small beliefs that you have around what it is you stand for. And then you can take this outwards in terms of what it is that others are standing for. So you can look and listen for what your colleagues, your friends around you, your inner circle is standing for, and kind of resonate with that or not. It's okay, but you can listen out for it. Um, then you can be listening out and understanding what it is that the projects that you're working on, what it is that they stand for. What is that project about? What are you trying to achieve? And that's a form of how you advocate for your project, is understanding why it's there, why it needs to exist, and how it is that your involvement is going to make it better. And obviously, you can take that even further and extend to the industry and what the industry needs because it needs a lot. It needs a lot of improvement. Let's be honest. So imagine when we get more people in this industry who can advocate for themselves, can advocate for the people around them, they can advocate for the right projects. Then we're on the way for how we advocate for the right things within our industry. And I guess just to give you an example of where you can start with something that's quite small but powerful. For me personally, what I stand for is I'd like to believe that I do as I say I'm going to do. So that's a really strong belief I have. And in the grand scheme of things, that's quite a small belief and understanding. But you can take that, well, you can certainly it defines the way you show up. If I say I'm going to do something, then I want to do what I'm saying that I'm going to do, and I live by that. But I appreciate that not everybody does, so I'm not trying to like make sure that everyone else follows my lead here. But it is just this understanding of that's a core belief that I have about who I am, and it helps me kind of see others. And it also helps me kind of realize that if I could take that form of advocacy to others in terms of helping them achieve what they said that they want to do, then it's taking my level of advocacy outwards. And then you can imagine if you can apply that to a project, and then you can apply that to the industry, like I've just said. So it's this growing idea of how you can advocate and why it's so important for yourself, for the people around you, and to move our industry. forward and to become a better leader. And I'm obsessed by that, as you know. So I do think that it's this awareness of where you are in terms of your identity and how you want to show up. And I think a lot of the comments coming in are from people who have no problem actually understanding who they are, but the problem seems to be in terms of how others perceive them. So we will get to that, and we will get to some of the practicals today. But first of all, I just want to go through those broader concepts around why advocacy is so important. So I guess I'd like to start with this idea that if you are passionate about something, then you're more likely to speak up about it and to speak out. So, and I think the other commentary coming in from a lot of people is, okay, fine, I understand I need to speak up, but I'm worried about it not sounding like it's just my ego speaking, or but this is it. If you lead passion, and if you speak up about things you're passionate about, it will come across as passionate rather than. And I'm also hoping that that's kind of the tone in which I'm speaking today, because clearly I don't know everything that there is to know about this subject, but I have looked at it intently and I've observed around me intently, and I'm extremely passionate about it. And I hope that that's the kind of tone and the feeling you get from this conversation. It's a passion of mine, because I think it's just such a solid grounding to then help people forward. So I think we've got that solid basis of being able to speak up and speak at the right times. Then I think that's where we'd like to be. And I'd just say, like, in terms of my background growing up, I'm certainly not somebody who speaks when it needs to be spoken. And I don't know how many of you are like that, but I've grown up in that sort of setting where you speak when it's the right time to speak, but not just to hear your own voice. That's just not the way I've been brought up. So, and I think that's kind of the rumblings of what I'm communicating today, is that it is important that you know what you stand for, but it's equally important to know what setting you're in, and to understand that people aren't always ready to hear you, even if you speak so eloquently, even if you choose your words so beautifully. Sometimes people just aren't ready to hear you. And that is a great lesson as well, I would say. But I think it's so important to start with passion and lead with passion when you're speaking up. So, and I think the other trap we might fall into, especially women, and I know that I have been accused of this, and I've certainly felt it, that I come across sometimes as a bit too emotional. I put a bit too much passion into what I'm doing. So I think where appropriate, you need to temper the emotions according to the setting that you're in. But the essence of it is lead with passion, because that doesn't come across. It's not your ego. It's not boastful. It's what you're passionate about, and that's why you're speaking up and speaking out. I also love the concept, and really, for me, it starts with how I can advocate for others, because I personally find it easier to advocate for others than I do for myself. And I don't know whether that's a common trait. I don't know whether that's a female thing. I don't know. It's personality or character type, I suspect. But I do find it easier to advocate for others before myself. But the interesting thing that happens when you do that is that you start to see things in others that you want to see in yourself that you probably haven't seen, you haven't recognized, or you haven't acknowledged it. It's there, but you haven't acknowledged it. It's interesting. I mean, there is science behind the fact that when you see something in other people, it's actually something that you notice in yourself, subconsciously or not. So I think something very powerful happens when you start advocating for others. It certainly obviously helps others when you do that, but equally actually does help yourself as well, because you start to understand what it is people what it is that people resonate with, and how it sounds to speak up about something and out and encourage someone about a particular thing that they've just done. You hear how that sounds, and and actually it doesn't sound boastful, especially when you're talking about somebody else. You're encouraging them, and you're helping them understand what it is they've just done great. So it is good. It's a good thing to be doing. I personally find it easier to advocate for others. If you're similar, then I would start there. So I would still have this understanding of what it is you stand for, and it'll help you see certain qualities in others that you then want to advocate. But I would put a lot of emphasis on advocating for others so that it becomes easier to advocate for yourself. I also think it's really important to understand that you don't have to have fully formed opinions to have a say. And I think this has taken me a long time to understand, and probably this is something I'm still working on, to be fair. And I think that I've spent a lot of time in meetings or in situations where I'm forming this idea. I'm trying to add something to what someone's just said because I think there's some value in that, and I think I can add something. And I've spent so long trying to figure out what the right words are that, of course, the conversation has moved on. Of course, I've missed my moment, and I've been so intent on trying to figure out what the right words are and what the right timing is for that, that I've lost track of what it is that they were saying, and I haven't been listening clearly either. So it's an interesting one, but I think when you accept that not all your opinions have to be fully formed ideas, and maybe it's the way you frame that so that it doesn't come across as full conviction when perhaps you don't have full conviction, but it's still worth saying and still worth bringing up anyway. Then I think there's something very powerful in that. And the other thing I would say is that if it feels as though you have got a really clear understanding of what you stand for, you are advocating for others, and you are accepting that you don't have these fully formed ideas, and yet you're still not gaining any traction from the people around you, then you have to kind of question what that environment, what that culture in that environment is doing. So, I talk with leaders about how it is that they, will get on to asking for promotion and things like this, and all the personal situation at home, um, that they're unsure about how to raise this in a professional setting, because it's a professional setting and you don't bring all of your personal things with you. That's true. But if it's going to start impacting your work and the people around you, it's fair that you bring something to the table and that you feel safe and secure enough to do that. And if you can't, then you've got to question the environment there and start raising some, well, not just the issue, looking for ways to solve that's a safe space to make people aware, and so that people can bring some personal things to the table, not to diminish what they're doing, but to actually support that they need. So I would say that sometimes we can, and this is what I said earlier, that sometimes we can choose the right words and say it at the right time and be in the right setting and all of those things, and it still doesn't land. But where there is that, where you're in a space where you can't even begin to open up the conversation, you've got to go back to the root cause and see what can be done to make that a safer space. And that's not an easy thing to do. I appreciate, but start making some headways in that, and you'll feel like you can influence something and not just feel like a bystander who's just having to receive and not able to speak up. That's so unhealthy for so many reasons, and it can't be helping your projects. It can't be helping your organization, and you need to alert leaders around you that this is the risk that is happening. If you're not allowing people to speak up and to speak out on certain things in a respectful way, then there's a big problem that needs to be solved, and a lot of energy needs to be put into solving it, because it will help so many other aspects of the business. And then the one of the last things I would like to, in terms of concepts I'd like to cover is leading before you are officially a leader, that you've officially got the title. And we'll go into reasons why. It maybe sounds like you're asking for trouble, but believe me, it sets you up for success as a leader. So we'll get onto that. But that concept, I just want you to have that concept in your head about leading before you're officially allowed to lead with the title, etc. So that's something I would love you to hold on to as a concept. And really, the whole thing about today, and I hope what you take away, is that when you get better and better at advocating for yourself and the people around you, it actually makes many things easier. It makes those difficult conversations that need to be had easier. It gives you strength to say, you know what, I'm seeing something as a small issue here. Let's deal with it now before it becomes a big issue. And I recall there was many situations where I was told, you seem to like conflict. And, I would just look at these people and say, nobody likes conflict. That is like, no. Um, but I can see why they were thinking along these lines. And although they didn't fully form their ideas when they were speaking to me about it, I do understand that what they were seeing is that I was drawn to a small conflict in a very big team very quickly. And I was drawn to it because I understood that if I could help solve that conflict when it's small, then it wouldn't become too big to manage. And on a big team, complex team where there's a lot of things going on, there's high stakes, there's a lot of pressure, there's a lot of moving parts. It's inevitable that there's little rumblings and things that start emerging. And you can't not have that in the team. But the idea is to have that as this healthy balance of people raising issue when there's something can be done about it. And so, although some people were looking at what I was doing and seeing me drawn to conflict, and you seem to like conflict, no, I like the idea of stepping in where I can solve something and not when I can't. I guess that's what I realize now, and I probably didn't have the words to explain it at the time. I didn't even fully understand what I was doing. It was just instinct. But I can see that again, it's a perception that could. Some people may have thought I was advocating for the fact conflict. I'm clearly not. I'm stepping in to try and solve it. But it's interesting how some people will perceive things very differently. So I really want to speak about how it is that you can find your voice, because it's all very well speaking up and speaking out, but how you've got to find your voice first. And like I'm suggesting, it really does start with understanding what you stand for, because that determines how you show up and what you care about. And like I said before, if you're leading with passion, it won't come across as boastful. So finding what it is you care about is the essence of finding your voice, I think. But for some of you, it might be easier to first look at what it is you don't stand for. That could be an easier way to narrow things down. Because I think, yeah, it could just be an easy way to get to a target point and say, look, these are the 3 or 4 things that I care about based on the fact that, these are the things I definitely don't stand for. So I think there is merit in that. I think the other thing to be careful about when you're trying to find what it is you stand for and find your voice is that it's not circumstantial, because there's certainly moments in your life, in your career, where you look around you and there's a bit of a mess going on at that moment in time, but that's not permanent. It's not forever. It's a moment. And so if you're going to define who you are and what you're about in those moments, it's probably not very healthy and it's not really a way forward. So I think just be careful of finding those things you're passionate about and you're maybe fighting against in some way, shape, or form, the ones that are core to you and not just the ones that are circumstantial. Because circumstantial, yes, there's some things you need to deal with, and yes, you're going to need to speak up about those. But just be clear about those ones that are your core beliefs, the ones that really are important in time, and put the right energy into to that based on whether it's core or whether it's circumstantial. I think, again, back to this idea of not every idea needs to be fully formed, because you are evolving as a person, and it depends on, your work and your life and who you're surrounded by and all of those things. And I think you should want to be influenced by some things around you. I think you've probably got examples in your life where you know someone who you've known for a long time and they just haven't changed an iota about anything. They are so fixed, and that's a challenging way to be, I would say. So yeah, so I think I embrace the fact that I have some strong opinions on some things and not on others. I'm okay with not having fully formed ideas, but that has taken some time to. So let me give you permission to have that. Okay, of course, with that comes the responsibility of not then speaking with such conviction about something that you may not have full conviction about internally. So yeah, I think this is back to this authentic voice. You can say, look, I am still, the jury's a little bit out on this, but my current understanding is, or my current experience of this is along these lines. I'd like to think it's going to change, but at the moment, this is what I believe based on what I've experienced. But I'd like to think that that can evolve, and I think that's the way you kind of frame it. And I think, just as an add-on to that, it's not expecting that others are going to have the same opinion as you. Of course, we're all different. We've all come from very different backgrounds. We have different belief systems. And although it can be frustrating at times, I think it's important to just accept that, sometimes people don't want to hear you. Sometimes people don't want to be persuaded by your ideas. But you can still try. You can still try if you genuinely believe it's good for them and good for your project, good for your organization. Then, if your intent is good, then you should go for it. Is what I would say. So the thing is, yeah, so starting by what you stand for, and with all the messiness that comes with. And then I would say it's really important to do some courage stepping, to do some reflection on what it is you've done that's been great in your life and your career so far, even when people haven't told you so, but especially if you've told you so, that's great. But just the things that that have gone well, and the things that that have made a difference. Um, and I think that we can just say, "Oh, well, I'm sure I do know about these things." Write them down, get them out, record something, like have something tangible that you can look at and say, "Oh my goodness, there's all these things that I've done." And start small, but when those small things start building up, they stack up and they become something quite powerful. And I think that, if you're someone who struggles with this, like I know I have in the past, but now I can write and reflect very easily. But that's taken me some time to practice. But I would say, if that isn't something you normally do in terms of spending time with yourself and reflecting on what it is you've done and where you're going, then I would block out a time, say an hour, and just not let any other distractions come in. Just start writing, just start recording something, and don't stop. Even when there's gaps, even when there's like pauses, just keep going until you get to this point where you realize, and the floodgates will open once you start unlocking some of these things that you've done that have been great, that have been hidden away and it can be conversations. It doesn't all need to be incredible outputs in terms of major projects or major milestones in terms of moving country or anything. It can be these small things that build and build and build. And yeah, so I just think create some kind of tangible output where you can look at it and go, yeah, these are all the things I've done. This is why I stand for what I stand for. This is why I can advocate for myself, because these are all the things I've done. And these are the things I can also look for in others, because I'm curious about how others have done some of these things as well. I can learn from them. I can encourage them, and that's a really good thing to do. So it sounds like a menial task, but actually it's very, very powerful. So block out time, do not stop until you have this tangible output of all the good things that you have done. And you could even take that further about all the good things you still want to do to help direct you in terms of where you can take how you advocate forward. And I would say that so the biggest question, the biggest conversation piece leading into this workshop today was around, okay, so I know what it is I want to say, but I've said it, actually I've said it a number of times and it's not been heard. It's not been heard. And look, I think this is a classic situation that we've all been through countless times. And I would say that, it's something to work at. But these are my best tips for how to work at it. In terms of you will need to advocate for yourself and for an issue more than once, certainly more than once, and more times than you probably want to know about. So I would get used to hearing you say it. I would work out ways that it can sound fresh for you so you don't sound like a broken record. And believe you me, when you figure out ways to say that same thing in a slightly different way so that it sounds fresh for you, so that you sound passionate about it, not boastful, passionate, then believe me, it'll be that sixth or seventh time, or maybe that one little word you've changed something, or it's the timing of it. It's the setting where you had that conversation that's different. There's some little component that's different this time, then it lands. Then it lands. So I would don't give up and certainly say something more than once because people don't listen, even if they look like they're listening. They are thinking, well, what is she thinking about me? Or does she really think I don't know about this? And so there's all these things going through someone's head when you're speaking to them that means that they're not listening to you, even if they have the best intent to listen to you, even if they're a lovely person. It happens to the best of us. So definitely say something more than once. Find fresh ways of saying it. Find different settings, different timings, different ways to say the thing you want to say. So I would say temper your emotion according to the setting, but don't kill it. I think the passion needs to come through. Um, and so I think that, I mean, I'm someone that like I said, I've been called emotional or whatever at times, and I think women come across as more emotional than men do at times. But nevertheless, it's some emotion is important because it conveys how much you care about this issue. And so I think you allow some emotion in there, temper it according to your setting. If you're in a boardroom situation, clearly that's going to be hard to be emotional in there, and for you to remain credible, I would say. But it does depend on the setting, the people around the table, how you framed it, what's happened before, what will happen afterwards, and all of those things. So you have to use your judgment ethically. But I would say bring some emotion, but just temper it according to who you're speaking to, the setting, the timing, and just on that point, timing is everything. So I would observe how if you've got one particular person you are trying to reach and you've spoken to them a number of times, you've got a good relationship with them, but it just hasn't landed. I would say observe how others are speaking to them and their reactions, their body language. Their body language is telling you a lot. So you don't even have to hear the conversation to understand how that's being received. And when you pick up on good body language from the person you are trying to reach, from this other person trying to talk to them, then you can model something of what they're doing because there's something that maybe they've said some just great news. I get that it's different, but observe how this particular person you want to speak to reacts to different conversations, different settings at different times. And when you can basically start to draw some patterns, this sounds like you're stalking someone, so please don't stalk someone, but it just be on high alert, I would say. If this is important to you and you've raised it a number of times, then you've got to find a way to just, well, at least one more time. So if that's the approach, then take some time to kind of look around and understand the setting. And it could well be, and this has happened to me a few times, is that actually that's not the right person to speak to, and speaking to a person adjacent around the corner or in a slightly different department or a slightly different um, level actually unlocks the conversation that you need to have. So obviously be careful about, you don't want to be going behind doors and things like that, because I'm not a fan of any of that. But it is important. If something's important to you, it is important to try and find a way to reach the people that need to hear it. So I think there's definitely some merit in putting the right energy into that. I would say that always when you're trying to advocate in a large group setting, that is probably the hardest thing you can do. Because imagine you've got 10 people or more around the table and you're trying to convince them of something, but there's 10 different agendas and 10 different things going on inside their heads, but you're like with the one conversation, you're trying to land all of those people. So I'm a big fan of having conversations with smaller groups first and then taking it to a large group. I can certainly recall conversations where I was in charge of trying to create the vision and trying to articulate the vision. So the vision, there was a group of people obviously behind this, but I was trying to articulate everything that's been discussed and distill it down into something that is the core mission, is the core vision. And I would step into these meetings with 30 odd leaders, and a lot of them technical, and I would make sure it's on the agenda. We can talk about vision, and the eyes would roll, and they'd be like, "Oh, Tanya, we're not going to talk about this again." We'll do it. We'll get you some time at the end. And so it became like a running joke that I would need. I knew that I had the client's backing. I knew we were doing the right things in terms of what we were trying to convey. I knew it was important. I knew we were going to get that support going forward with the client as well. But getting it across in these meetings was just really hard to do. But when we started to break it down and go into smaller groups and get them to see why it is that we're doing what we're doing, why this vision is going to be important, it's going to help their work on a day-to-day basis, then they started to listen. Then it was easier to the group. So there's definitely merit in reducing the group size and getting the feedback on what it is that you're concerned about so that you can address those feedback issues straight up into a group so that in effect, they relax and they go, well, she's thought about all of the things that she knew we were going to ask, and she's thought about all of those things. Now I can relax and actually listen. So I would say that in terms of how I get asked a lot, how do you prepare for, an important presentation or a big meeting situation? That takes a lot of courage and conviction. And I would say it does, but for a lot of people I speak to, they've got serious knowledge about their project, serious knowledge about the presentation. They just don't have the confidence to stand in front of the people that they're standing in front of, or seating in a board situation, because they're not usually in that setting. And I would say that, yes, try and get to know your setting as best you can. So understand what it is you're going to walk into, what is the layout, what's the format, and who's going to be there, and what are they likely to want to know, so that I'm speaking to them and not just about the things I want to speak about. So I would say that the preparation in terms of understanding the room and who's there is absolutely key. And I've seen people that I thought were just absolutely natural communicators. I've seen the work they put in prior to any presentation. And so there's no shame in that. Absolutely not. Prepare before you go in. And I would also say that it's this courage stacking for yourself. Like, I've been in these situations. I know this project inside out. I know the people here. So I can speak and I can answer questions that come up. I can do that, and I'm preparing myself to do exactly that. And I would also say that in large meeting situation where I've spent countless times trying to think of the right things to say, and maybe crack a joke or something to lighten the mood or whatever it is. You spend so much of your time doing that, you haven't listened to anything, you haven't taken on board, you've missed some things or whatever. So I have found that if there's a way that you can at least hear your own voice at the very beginning of a meeting, as early as possible, then it somehow makes it easier to speak up in these short moments throughout when it's right to speak up. And so I would, whereas I've been in situations where I've waited the entire meeting before I make the point I want to make, and it's a little bit out of context. My voice is sounding all weird because it's the first time I'm hearing it in the room, and the same with everybody else. Suddenly doesn't sound like it sounds foreign. So I just think there's um, so much to this in terms of speaking up early, and even if it's small chit chat, something. So you hear your voice, they hear your voice, and it sort of breaks the ice a little in terms of how you can speak up going forward. um, and I would I I certainly learn from some key operators in this space that there'd be some people who would say something highly critical, but they've just framed it in such a way that it sounds friendly, and it sounds like, of course, why didn't we think of that? And it was all in the pre-frame. It's all in that I've just heard what you said, and a week ago I was exactly where you are, but now you know what I'm thinking about is this, or the thing I think we might be missing is this. And there's something about how you frame something you're about to say, and it means that you come across as more credible and friendly even. Um, and although I'm not such a fan of people that know how to do these side conversations from these big groups, I do think there's merit in speaking to individuals or smaller groups about certain things before you take it to a larger group. So in terms of bringing people with your mental disorder, so I think an important part of how you advocate is how you actually bring people with you. And I think it's along the lines of how do you persuade people that potentially don't want to be persuaded by something. And I would just say it is about investing time in those relationships outside of those high pressure meeting situations. So and I know that's not easy to do, and especially if if you're probably working remotely and all of these things, but also if you're just not a natural friend to some of these people in your setting. Just they don't just not natural people you hang out with. So it's harder to just build a relationship with them. But um, sometimes it can just be from the tone of your emails and the helpfulness you have in terms of, I heard you ask this question, this thing, right? Or it can just be some of those things that build a relationship. It doesn't have to mean you have to go to the pub with them or go to lunch with them or a coffee with. It's just you can find other ways to build a relationship with some of the people, some key people around you. And I would say I didn't do enough of this when I was in a large practice, and I've definitely felt that that was a big part of what was missing for me. So I think there's many different ways to do that, and if you can find the right people, put some put energy into the right people, and I think that's fruitful and turn into a mentoring relationship. It could turn into just a collegiate relationship in terms of I share some insights with you and you share them with me, and both our lives are easier as a result. So I would say like this, like it's like one conversation at a time with your coach, and, and I think you'll be amazed by just some of the groundwork you put in there will have big dividends when it is you want to speak up and speak out. And I would say that, in terms of difficult conversations, this is, I mean, difficult conversations are difficult for a reason because you're tackling something that somebody doesn't want to hear. Um, that it's like the short-term pain for a long-term gain. And so I think a lot of us, and I know I've accused myself of it, of some conversations I put off because I thought it's just too hard right now. I don't have the headspace. I don't want to drop the ball on the project. I'm exhausted and I don't have the headspace. And I think this might throw too much of a curveball into things. But just knowing that when you don't have that conversation that you know you need to have, that's hard. It just gets harder and harder. It actually doesn't get easier. So I think that just um, have the courage, pick a time that seems the most suitable. It's never going to be perfect, I suppose, and try and create the right setting. Try and set the tone of this is not accusational. This is not to cause trouble. This is so we can fix something. I need to understand what's happening here so I can help solve it. What can I do? What can you do? What can we do? What can change? And I think it's in how you frame it, you'll be surprised by the conversation is not as difficult as you may have thought first up. But all the work that you're doing in terms of how you advocate for people will show through now when you're having this difficult conversation because you're alert to things that you weren't alert to before. You're listening for things. You're commenting on some of the good things that have happened to help kind of lighten the mood and to stress that this isn't confrontational necessarily. It's with good intent. So in terms of how you can create better visibility for yourself in terms of your own career progression, I get asked this a lot because I think this is a natural question. You've got people, and I was definitely one of them, that you've just got your head down, you're working so hard, and you want and expect that your work speaks for itself. But as we come to learn, it doesn't. Um, Although there might be some distant recognition at some day in the future, what you need right now is something more concrete than that. Um, so that you can build your courage to speak, so that you can build your conviction to ask for information, so that you can seek more responsibility, take on more initiatives, and all these things. So I think that when you're going into a conversation around would like a promotion, I always advise people to do this courage thinking exercise. Go in as confident as you can in terms of knowing what you've done. It doesn't mean you need to reel off all these things you've done. Just knowing that about yourself, you sit differently. Your head is held high. Your outlook is different. So start there. I would also make sure that you've set the tone for that conversation. That you want a serious conversation about your career and where it's going. And you've thought very carefully about what value you can bring. And these are the things you're seeing, and this is what you think you can add value to. But then equally ask, what am I missing? Where is your expectation that I'm not meeting, and how can we close that gap? You can bet that the person sitting opposite you hasn't thought very much about that. They're sort of relying on the vagueness of the situation when it's not clear what you should be doing and it's not clear um, what you are doing. It's kind of easy to have, oh, we don't need to have a conversation about promotion because nobody's clear about anything. But when you can get clear on your side about what it is you are doing, and you can even put forward a proposal about, well, this is what I would consider someone in this type of role to be doing. Where do you see gaps in that? And get them to kind of, react to something rather than just a abstract conversation, an abstract idea of something here. So I think don't be afraid to put a proposal on the table. This is what I would like to see is this kind of role, and this is what I bring to the role. What do you think? Where are the gaps? How can we move this forward? And don't leave without there being some clear actions on both sides. Don't take everything. Don't take everything, and then follow up with those actions and with the so now you're building this evidence as to why you deserve that promotion. Now, of course, there's going to be situations where the organization doesn't have the money or whatever reason they're going to come up with, but let them come up with their reasons. and really have to think very carefully about justifying why they can't give you a promotion, rather than avoiding the conversation altogether. So I think that's my wish for you, that you have those conversations and that you're fully prepared for them. And I also have lots of conversations with leaders around, I want to be more visible. So my automatic reaction is I need to go out there and network like crazy. I need to get out there and throw my business cards around. And although I don't like networking, it's clearly the most effective way for me to become more visible and to represent the organization. I would challenge you on that in terms of being the most effective way, because I don't know that your senior leaders will understand fully that you're going out to these events and what that's bringing. Unless that's bringing in clients, maybe that's a different story altogether. And if that's something you're actively seeking to do, and that clients do come in as a result, then go for it, because that's evidence, that's trackable, that's measurable, that's impactful. Go for it. But if you're in that situation where I just need to put myself out there, I would say start inside the practice. I would say start with initiatives that you really care about, and start advocating for people to come together, for you to facilitate those conversations, and to see whether you can build some momentum inside your practice, because that will be seen by the leaders. They'll feel something is different. They may not know exactly what is different, and that's up to you to then articulate it. But you can start some of these initiatives inside your practice. You can start doing like presentations inside the practice and things like this. So I would start visibility inside your practice, and then go outwards from them. And I guess there's a lot of people that are fearful of social media, and I get it. I completely get it. I mean, I only started social media really like 4 years ago now, and you have to start small, but start by commenting on some people that you know and that you like what they're doing. So comment on others first, then start reposting with some comments, and then start posting your own. So I think you can build up the confidence. You can build up something. You can go to talks and give a summary about, these are my key takeaways. And although there could be 100 other people giving their key takeaways from one talk, it won't be the same as yours. It won't. And this is a brilliant way to find your voice at the same time, because your observations from a talk are absolutely different from others. And it's worth sharing, because that helps you form your opinion. It helps you shape your own perspective, and you get your voices out there. And I would say that I go and look for situations where there's panels that are inviting speakers that don't normally get to be on panels. And I know that we were doing this with Women in Architecture, the mentoring program. I was deliberately putting people on panels that's not what they would normally do. And so we would thoroughly prepare. So there would be a theme, we'd have the questions, we'd do some preparation calls. So you can set up that to be a win situation. And what I found is that you only need to start asking some of these individuals questions, and then suddenly the floodgates open, and there's so much they can talk about, and they speak with such passion. And I think that was a reminder for me that sometimes you just need to be asked the right questions, and then the answers are there. You just need to be asked and prompted by the right people in the right setting for that to be really beneficial. And I would say my last point is along the lines of leading before you're a leader. Again, I have so many conversations with people who are in a leadership position. They've got an incredible title, actually, but they don't have the full mandate to lead, or they have the mandate to lead in these very isolated situations. And it sort of only becomes clear that they don't have a full mandate to lead when they are trying to get involved in a decision, and then they're being pushed aside, or they aren't invited to the table for certain decisions. And although their title would you would assume gives them the right to many decision-making tables. It's not always the case. So I would say that alone as a concept is absolutely why you should lead before you're a leader. Because when you can step into these situations of, look, I know I don't have the mandate to lead here, not yet, but I can see what the team needs, and I can see what you, the leader above me, is looking for. How can I help? Can I take something from you in order to help you, but equally to help the team around me and myself, by the way? So when you're stepping up, you're actually bringing others with you, because you're actually allowing the leader above you to do something else because they've had their limiting items somewhat. And if you're stepping up, then the people around you are also stepping up. So there's such a huge benefit for leading before you're a leader. And the other thing that happens when you do this, and you obviously need to be responsible about this, but it means you come into this role knowing you don't know everything. So you're going to ask more questions. You're going to be more alert and involve more people because you don't have all the answers. And honestly, these are the people that make better leaders, because they don't think they know everything, and they are going to draw people in. And those people, by being drawn in, are advocating for themselves or for the project or for the organization. And so it's everything that we've been talking about. It's playing out in full color, if you like, when you're leading before you lead. I think the other thing that happens is you question things. Because you're not set in your ways as a leader, that it's not this sort of rolling of, well, this is what we've always done. Well, actually, no, I don't know, because I've never been involved in these meetings before, or I've never had to make a decision like this before. So I'm going to almost start from first principles and probably arrive at a better solution. So I think don't be afraid, because so like I said, go in responsibly. But I think when you go in responsibly, you're asking more questions. You're not accepting just what you see in front of you. And you are probably also going to take some calculated risks along the way, because you're leading with so much caution, and you're closer to the details of your team, and you're there to support a leader at the end of the day above you potentially. So I think there's so much merit in that. So I certainly like to talk about leaders leading before they lead, even though I can appreciate on the outset there's a concept that is a hard thing to do, because you don't want to take on more work that is that you're responsible for, but not accountable for, and you take on all the stress for. But it is definitely something to aim for. So I want to draw all this back together now in terms of bringing it all together. What have we been talking about, and why is it so important? And so I want to come back to this idea that when you advocate with passion and you lead with passion, it doesn't come across as boastful. It doesn't come across as your ego talking. This is coming across as something that you care about. And I think that has a lot of sway for other people. Because you know what it's like when you can see someone talking passionately, you're just drawn to what they're saying, even if you don't fully understand it and you don't agree with it. You're just drawn to it. So I think there's definitely something in that to take on. When you advocate for others, it really is this contagious thing that others start doing it, because then they feel as though they've been seen, and then they start seeing others, and it just has this ripple effect. So it's no bad thing to be advocating for others, and at the same time, it will make you better at advocating for yourself. And when you accept that not all your opinions are fully formed, that it just gives you the right to change your mind. It gives you the right to frame things. It gives you the right to move in different circles where people have different opinions and different perspectives. It gives you that right to do that, and it's quite freeing, actually. It's quite freeing as well. And when you're in an environment where you can't speak up and speak out, it feels as though if you conform to a very narrow point of view, you could speak up. but if you don't, then you better be silent. Now, those are obviously tough environments to work within. And, you know, you would need to look around and see what can be done about that. Sometimes the leaders just aren't aware. They just aren't aware. They've been in it for so long that they're not aware that it's such a narrow point of view and it's constraining, and you're losing people as a result of this narrow point of view and people not speaking their truth. It's not healthy. And you can imagine if that's happening inside the organization, what is that doing for the projects that you're running and the other things you're doing? It can't be good. So I think yes, a lot of you I know are in these situations where it's heading down that way if it's not there already, and you sort of feel a bit helpless, and I get that. But I would say if you're looking to create a long-term relationship with that organization and with the projects that you're on, I would chip away at what can be done to fix this kind of cultural issue. And it maybe doesn't start at the top. Maybe this is this groundswell of passion that starts at the lower levels, and you get enough conviction in people that you're talking with. Okay, this is me thinking along these lines. What can we do together so that it's not single people pointed out as problems or the ones raising issues? It's actually a more of a collective, and maybe that's approach. You obviously have to use your judgment about the situation that you're in. And when you lead before you're a leader, you become a better leader. And I'm hoping I'm convincing you of that, if that fits where you are right now. Because effectively, you know what you don't know, and you lead from there. And certainly, when you get better at advocating, you walk different, you talk different, you move in different circles, you put yourself in different situations. And I think that this is a healthy place to be. So I'm hoping that I've conveyed why it's so important to advocate for yourself and for people around you, and how you can start now, and some of those small steps that you can do today, even. And I hope that for those of you who sent through your questions and your angles to me, I hope I've covered as many of those as I can. And what I'm looking to do is I'm going to create sort of a write-up of this, and I will hopefully answer those questions in this write-up as well. So I hope you've enjoyed today. I've enjoyed sharing what I've learned so far. There's a lot still to learn, and I look forward to engaging with you very, very soon. Thank you so much.